I want to ask what was actually the original sin?
Do you not know?
No, I'm
Oh,
kind of
okay.
curious.
Okay, right. Well, there's this book called the Bible, and it's kind of a bit of a story. Some people think it's actually true. I know, I know, I know. Don't. But some people do actually think it's true, which is really wild. But for the people that think it's true, in the story, kind of near the beginning, there's this scene, right? Don't laugh, okay? But God makes a garden, and he puts sort of dirt man and rib woman in this garden, right? He's just made them. He makes the man, and then he makes a load of animals to keep the man happy. But the animals don't really cut it. So after the animals haven't worked, he decides to give the man a woman by making a woman out of the man's rib. I know. So they're in the garden, and then God has this idea that he's going to encapsulate the most important wisdom that humans could ever have. And the way he's going to store this wisdom, rather than being in a library or on computers or carved into tablets, he decides to encode the wisdom in fruit. I know. That's what he decides to do. And so he puts all the greatest wisdom in the world, including the knowledge of good and evil, into a fruit tree. And then he goes away, kind of to see what's going to happen, even though he knows already what's going to happen because he's infinitely knowledgeable. So he goes away, and before he goes away, he lets a serpent into the garden, knowing what the serpent's going to do. So the serpent comes into the garden, and and God has told Dirt Man and Rib Woman not to eat the fruit from the tree because he wants them to stay unaware of what's right and wrong. But of course, because they're already unaware of what's right and wrong, they don't know that it's wrong to disobey what he says because they don't have that knowledge yet. So they're more like sort of little infants, a little bit like putting an infant next to a stove and the infant can't speak yet. And you go, don't touch the stove. But the baby's only 3 weeks old and doesn't understand what that means. And then the parent leaves. So he goes out. He allows the serpent into the garden, and the serpent says to Dirt Man and Rib Woman, "It's all good. You can eat the fruit, and it's going to be fantastic if you do, and it's not a problem." And being a bit simple, they fall for it. So they get fooled by the serpent, and so they eat some of this fruit. And then the moment they eat the fruit, they suddenly realize they're naked. I know, ridiculous, but they realize they're naked, so they cover themselves up. Then God comes back. He's very cross about all of this, very, very angry. And he says, "What's been going on here?" Even though he knew exactly what was going to happen because he's all knowing. And so immediately when he says that, the first thing that Adam does is he points at Rib Woman and goes, "It was her fault. She made me do it," which is hilarious because Adam is the first man and he's a complete coward. But anyway, God gets very upset with both of them. And then he's trying to come up with a punishment. So he punishes everyone. So he decides to punish the snake by making the snake crawl on its belly, which, if you think about it, isn't an enormous punishment for a snake, because that's kind of what they normally do. So the snake gets away with it pretty clean. Serpent is happy with his deal. And then he turns to Dirt Man and Rib Woman, and he tries to think, well, what can I do to punish them for having eaten the information encoded in the fruit? And his idea is to make everyone else who didn't do that crime pay the penalty for it and suffer for it. And including bring death into the world. There was no death before because all the great white sharks and the lions before were all vegetarian. So he decides at that point to bring death into the world. So immediately the digestive systems of all carnivores in the world are transformed from surviving on plant-based diets to needing to eat other animals and kill them painfully in most instances. And everyone else who's ever going to live for the rest of mankind then gets cursed because Dirt Man and Rib Woman ate the fruit. And then God comes up with the best bit, which is the way to get over the curse is he decides to come down to earth and have himself killed, and as a sort of payment for what Dirt Man and Rib Woman did. And then everyone fell for that and thought that was a wonderful idea. So that's really how the story goes. I know it's hard to believe, but some people actually think it's true. Don't be too hard on them, though. It's how they were raised normally.
Okay. Well, As you speaking there, that is coming from the book of Genesis, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, I listened to the explanation of that. But do you think that God had a plan
He must have done,
for
right?
mankind?
Because he's all knowing, right? So he presumably knows all future events. So he must have had a plan.
Right, because when it comes to even the angels, from reading the scriptures, it
Hmm.
seems to me that the angels had a choice, because the Bible says that, especially in Revelation, talk about the dragon took its tail and took a third of the angels. That means the devil, as we know him today, had the influence to took a third of the angels. So that means that the angels, even the angels themselves, had a choice. So they either stayed with God or they went to the devil. So don't you think it's an issue where God made us, but he made us with a choice. So in the garden, he said, well, here is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
Don't eat from it, or you will surely die, according to Genesis.
He said you'll surely die this day, didn't he?
Yeah, he said you will surely
He was
die,
lying,
but he
wasn't
didn't
he?
say,
Because they didn't die that day. They went on to have 2 children and possibly more.
yeah, but what death was he talking about?
Oh, spiritual death, not a real death.
Right, the spiritual
Yeah,
death.
a pretend death.
Does it
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that? Does the Bible say spiritual death or does it just say die?
Well, it has to be spiritual death because obviously they didn't die.
Right. And God would never
Or
tell a lie, would he?
Well, depend on what death he was talking about. So
Right.
if he said death and he meant spiritual death, he didn't lie.
Yeah. He could have said spiritual death, though, just to clarify for everyone so they really knew what the actual cost of the fruit was, right?
Well, yeah, but if you tell if you if you have a 2 year old and you tell them don't touch the stove or you will get burned, then they wanna experience the burn for themselves, but you cannot explain the pain. You can't explain the pain to them. You just say that you'll get burned.
Yeah, but he could have been
But
clearer
when
about it, couldn't he? Because the serpent
yeah,
says you won't die. The serpent actually told them the truth. The only liar in the story was God, right?
no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say
Well, read the
I wouldn't
text.
say that.
You'll see. But anyway, so onto this, right? He knew this. He knew all of this was going to happen, right? He put the serpent in the garden. He allowed it to happen. Could have stopped it easily. Wanted it to happen, obviously, and then decided to punish lots of innocent people for what Adam and Eve did. Does that make sense to you?
Well, he is not punishing us for what Adam and Eve did,
Oh, is he not? Is a fallen world
because
a
because
reward?
now no, because now we have a choice to make. Because it's like this: if you have a son, and wouldn't you be happy to know that because of how you bring up your son, that now he has a choice to go and, let's say, okay, let's say you're married and you got separated, and now you're in the court. Wouldn't you be happy to know that because of the love that your son have for you, he decided to come and live with you instead of his mother, who was treating him bad, who was, wasn't giving him food,
Yeah,
who wasn't you know
you'll have to forgive
would,
me, but the analogy is a little weak here because we're not having to
no, because
choose who
it
to live
speaks
with here,
about
are we?
choice.
Where's the
Excuse me.
choice? Where is the choice? And why should it be? Why should that choice be imposed anyway? I mean, as I said, we're offered Jesus as a means to salvation, but why should we need saving from anything? None of us ate the fruit. Did you eat the fruit?
No, but we are
I also didn't eat the
we
fruit.
came,
So why do we need saving?
well, we didn't eat the fruit, but we came through because of Adam and Eve. That's why we are here today.
Someone else did the
Right.
crime. Someone else did the crime, and we are culpable for it morally. Like
As the
if
Bible says that we are born, as the Bible says that we are born in sin and shaped in iniquity.
yeah, but
That
why are we
means
Why
born?
did
That's the whole
because
why did
point. Why are we
yeah
born in sin?
right, so we're born in sin. We are born in sin because of Adam and Eve eating the fruit, and they went
God
out because, as I
God
told you,
chose for
probably
that to
God
be
has
a
a different plan.
God chose for that to be a consequence, right? Of Adam. Why couldn't he just punish Adam and Eve for them sinning and not create this whole inherited sin thing to where future generations cannot not sin? Everybody has a sinful nature. Why would God choose that and then want to punish us for the nature that he created?
He, as I said, he created us, but he gave us free choice.
Well, I'm not
So
talking. I'm not worried about free choice. I'm talking about inherited sin, to where we have a sinful nature. That's something God specifically chose. He chose a consequence of Adam and Eve eating from the fruit, that future generations will have a sinful nature and not be able to not sin, and then say, you deserve punishment for this because free will, even though I gave you a nature to where you must sin. Why is that okay?
because of that, that's why Jesus came to redeem us
But
from that
you're missing the point. Why should we
sinful
need
nature.
redeeming? Why should we need redeeming?
Because we came through Adam and Eve, we came through that sinful decision that they make. So,
But that doesn't
I
make
mean,
sense. Why should people be held accountable for the decisions that their ancient ancestors made? That complete nonsense.
no, but it has to do with creation. It has to do with mankind, and that's just the way it
It has
is.
to do with the way that God made it, but he could have made it another way, which is why I say original sin is ridiculous. It is completely nonsensical. God gets angry with Adam and Eve in the garden and punishes billions of other people who haven't even been born yet. That's if a leader did that in the world now, we would call them criminally insane and they would be deposed and prosecuted. At least they should be. Some are trying to do it now anyway, but we don't look on them favorably. We all understand that punishing innocent people is not okay.
So you would prefer us not having a choice?
No,
I didn't say anything
no.
about that. Do you
Having
think?
a
Let me ask
sinful
you a
nature.
question. Yeah. Sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Having a sinful nature does not negate free will. Before Adam and Eve had their sinful nature, they had free will, right? Basically, he set the stage as such where, because they ate from the fruit, God decided that all future generations will inherit a sinful nature. And then that's something he decides he's going to punish us because of the way he made us. And then we require Jesus to be redeemed for what he did. How does that make sense?
Well, listen to it at this point, right? Now, if we read the book of Isaiah, I believe, where it speaks about Satan as we know him now, but he was created Lucifer, son of the morning, beautiful, um, in charge of music, as some theologians say. And he himself allowed pride to fill his heart and decided, I am going to be like the Most High. I'm going to sit up on the mountains. So basically, he's saying, well, okay, I'm too beautiful to just be who I am. I want to be just like God. And God decided that he's going to, after this war rage in heaven, God decided to kick him out. Now, would you say that God is evil to do that?
No, because he didn't punish other people for what he did.
Exactly. If God had decided to smack someone else round the face for what Satan did, then yeah, then God would be a dick. But if Satan broke the rules and God had to kick him out, okay, it's like being a member of the golf club and you come in with the wrong shoes enough times, they're going to say you can't come anymore. Rules is rules. I get it. But if the rules are if you go into the golf club with the wrong shoes enough times, they chop the legs off your children, then that's not a club you want to be paying membership dues to. bad golf club.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
the point. So that's why I say earlier that God had a plan,
yeah.
and this is the
So
plan that He had
was it a good
to re-
plan though?
to. I think it's a good plan. I
Really?
think it's a good plan.
Like,
Yep.
do you agree that there was no death in the world before the fall?
Before Adam and Eve,
Yeah,
before they ate the fruit. Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe there was no death.
Because some people don't believe that. So I'm just asking if you're one of the people who you do believe that. So before Adam and Eve ate the fruit, ate the fruit, what did great white sharks survive on?
I'm not sure. I'm
Plankton,
not sure.
perhaps. Okay. And lions, what did lions
Maybe,
eat?
maybe, maybe. Plants, maybe.
Plants. Yeah.
Are
So
there are there dental their teeth, are they structured for plants or are they structured for meat?
Well, I never really took a close look at that, so I can't.
yeah, ask any lion dentist; they'll tell you. But the point is that if God's plan was in the wake of Adam and Eve's transgression to suddenly transform the whole world into one where there was lots of suffering and death, why do you think that's a good plan? It sounds like, I mean, if you'll forgive the turn of phrase, it sounds like a bit of a shit plan.
Well, how about this? Because now the Bible says that that the serpent beguiled. So the devil entered the serpent and beguiled
Yeah,
Eve.
that's a change of subject. I'm asking you. Let's
No, no, no.
agree that
What I'm saying.
Adam and Eve did a naughty. Let's agree, for the sake of argument, that they were very bad. Why is the appropriate response to their transgression to penalize billions and billions of life forms for thousands or millions of years afterwards with pain and death and agony and suffering because of that? And why does that seem like a good plan to you? Because to me, if I was God and Adam and Eve broke my fruit rules, I would just punish them. And I would say, you've broken the fruit rules, you're very bad, no more fruit for you, and get out of the garden, and you have to you don't get any refund on your membership fees to the club either. Out. That's what I would say. But I wouldn't like screw over anyone else because I'm not a dick like that.
Yeah, but if you understand what he just said, he did that. But then what would he do after? Now, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, now they got the understanding as adults. That's the reason why they hid themselves, because now they found themselves naked. So when they were thrown out of the garden, then they got feelings to be sexually active, and out from that, here comes children, and then those children, they're going to have that same knowledge of good and evil, so they had to choose what to do. And so but you just said that he kicked them out. He did. But then what happened after? They continued in that knowledge to multiply, to have children,
Yeah.
and to just, you know.
And we all know what he had to do next, don't we? He had to kill all the kittens and the kangaroos. They all had to go. Those
So
naughty,
you see,
naughty kittens.
so you see what's happening there. So you see what's
Yeah.
happening there.
Yeah, he's a
Because
complete
God
psychopath.
Himself, no, because God Himself
Yes.
decided that, and even He said, it says there in the Bible that He repented that He made man, because of men were thinking evil continually. That was just all men was thinking about,
I
evil
know. And he
continually.
only had
And
one solution, which was to kill all the babies and kill all the reindeer. Just had to do it. And look how effective it was, because after that, there was no more evil and no more people thinking bad thoughts. Well done, God. Excellent plan. He really smashed it, didn't he? I mean, he had a great idea. Kill everyone, kill all the animals, get the population of the world down to one man, drunk, and his family on a floating zoo, and everything's going to be fine. And it worked brilliantly. Well done. Come on, look. You know what I'm going to say to you,
It
because
didn't
it's
work.
becoming a bit of a catchphrase around here. But I'm going to say, grow up. This never happened. This is a silly story. We are all adults here, at least we're supposed to be. We don't believe in magic when we get to a certain age. This is silly. There are more sensible ways of engaging with life than this, and you know it.
So what do you think? What it's okay. So what do you think happened?
Well, I think this is a made up story. And we actually know quite a lot about our origins. We may not have a full understanding of exactly how life originated, but there are some very promising and plausible hypotheses which are being investigated at the moment. One of them is going to bear fruit at some point in the next few decades, or not too long, I think. But we understand how a diversity of life evolved on this planet from basic beginnings. We have a very good understanding of how that works. We understand the mechanism of it perfectly. It's the most highly evidenced thing in pretty much all of science.
So it's basically evolution. So God didn't actually created man.
So the biblical account in Genesis certainly is not true. In theory, a deistic God, for example, could have created the universe, and then nature played itself out and the earth formed from an accretion disk and abiogenesis happened, and then biological evolution formed us. So evolution does not posit that there is no God, but it certainly falsifies the literal translation of the Genesis account of creation.
Okay. All right.
And some Christians, by the way, don't take the Genesis account of creation literally, but many do.
A lot of Christians believe that the fruit was actually um sex or whatever. But thanks. Great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, and appreciate you kicking us off tonight. Thank you very much indeed.